Cool. Okay. Welcome. I think we can get started. Welcome to KidSplit's first ever mock panel. We are very excited to have everyone who's here live and who's streaming and who will watch this in the future. I'm sure you found out about this through KidSplit, but if you didn't, KidSplit is a peer-to-peer gear sharing service for photographers, videographers, musicians, podcasters. So feel free to check that out, kitsplit.com. And I'm Andy. I will be your host this evening. We have a bunch of incredible participants. We're going to go through their materials. We're really excited about it. We have a team. It wasn't just me behind the scenes looking through these. There were a number of folks who contributed their opinions, Pew Grant winners, NEH Grant winners. We had a lot of folks put eyes on these, so it was truly a group effort. That was great. We have a question from YouTube. For the visual tone cards, how many should be included? Is there a best practice or length for a pitch packet or deck? Is it better to have 10 pages or 20 pages, etc.? This is a great question. I'm going to take it before I roll into Geraldine, which is our next project. I think that in terms of the optimal length for a pitch packet, you want the least amount of pages that can convey what you want to convey. I don't think it's page numbers. I don't necessarily think it's even like longer for a feature or shorter for a short. I think the in terms of visual tone, I think one card per thing that you're commenting on is really helpful. So I personally like to separate them, right? So one of mine is visual language and it's a highlight on color. And another one is visual language and highlight on lighting. Sometimes I comment on camera and lenses within that. Sometimes I don't. But I think that any separate category where you're discussing your visual language can have its own card with 1 or 2 or 7 examples about how you're going to use, color or whatnot. So I think it doesn't have to be multiple slides for each thing, because I think that would get repetitive, right? Like we don't need like 10 cards that have your, your color palette on it. But I don't think that there is a thing as too many pages if each page has a specific purpose. I hope that answered your question. And if it doesn't, you can follow up. Let's roll into our next project, Geraldine. We have Eddie here representing Hale's project. Sorry, I gotta get out of my PowerPoint here. I am going to, I am going to share the lookbook, which I loved, by the way. Does that look right to you? There you go. Perfect. Okay. So, right off the bat, I think this, the look of this front page is really bold. I think the image of the closed eyes like relates to your logline, your tagline. Like, I just think it is very clear. And I love that about this. You're not even wondering for a second what it is, except I was a little bit wondering what Losers Club is, but you get there in the end. So I'm like, it's nice to have a little bit of mystery. I did like that, but the title is there, the graphics are there. Overall, I would say like design wise, this pitch pack is like really solid. This is also, I should note, this is a short film that was already made. So just so everyone's familiar with the goal, this was a short film that was already made. So Eddie kind of had you have stills to put in your pitch packet, which is really nice. Obviously that's not something everyone can do if you haven't shot a trailer, if you haven't shot your project, but I think this really serves you well here, because the visual language is beautiful. The aesthetics are so concise throughout, and I love that. Cool. So let's start with the logline. I feel like, and everyone is going to also get familiar with me saying this, I think this reads a little bit like a tagline. That question is like, to me, it feels a little bit just like a movie poster, which is great, and you should have a tagline. For me, for a logline, and you can take this with a grain of salt since the film is already made, but for me, a logline, I think the stakes of this story are really high, right? Like it's like her life and death. Like she's like really weighing a lot of things. So I think you have the formula to create a very dramatic logline. And I think one of the things that's particularly difficult here is, when you look up a formula for a logline, it's like when the protagonist does this thing and the antagonist, then they have to blank blank insert the stakes before everything is terrible. But your protagonist and your antagonist here are like kind of the same person, right? Like, so I think it does make it harder to come up with a compelling logline, but the stakes are her survival. So even if it can't be more, even if you can only change the sentence structure a little bit, I would like to see that that's, her life is on the line. Because I think that you mentioned that other places, and I think that it's really important to the story, and just makes you want to watch it. Oops. One day. I love this. I love your synopsis. I thought it was concise. I love that your last line is cheeky. I think cheeky is really good if you are a cheeky person, right? Like if you are a sarcastic person, this is great. I think your tone comes through in this pitch packet as the creator of the film, or your team's tone, whoever worked on this, and it's consistent, and I love that. I think it's fair to make fun of yourself a little bit, or like make fun of the project or whatever. I think that's great. So yeah, I have no notes on that, honestly. This was great. I love this shot. I mean, this is gorgeous, whatever this is. I'm like, is this reflection, or it looks like reflections of the car window? I don't know. It's beautiful. So visuals are like absolutely killing it. The cast. I love this. The dog made me laugh. It was great. But I like that there's a description for the dog, and like what it represents. I love that you made Miami a cast member. I think it's so important. There is just this like tactile Miami, like the way it feels to be there, and I think you just captured it, like that Everglades feel. I love it. I used to live in Miami, and I feel like this was just like so on the nose, and it shows such a great amount of thinking outside the box on this one. Like just putting that, I think that was great. The only note I have on this is I would love a line about what Geraldine wants, just like what she wants as a character, either like an overarching want for her life, but more importantly, like what does she want in the purpose of the film, right? And I think, if she's kind of just, what do you call it? Like playing games, like dangerous games or whatever, like she wants to, whatever. But I think just what she's trying to do when she engages in this like kind of risky behavior would be a great addition. Because then of course we would understand whether or not you know, she gets what she wants or she doesn't. These are beautiful. These are just beautiful. I feel like if you are making another project, or if you're using this for, if you are going to shoot the other episodes of this web series, or this team is going to shoot them, and your visual language would be the same, I would really separate these into multiple slides and kind of just do some talking about your visual language and how it works. But if you're not, and if it's, you know, if you're like looking for contributions from other people, then it's not relevant. But if this is your, you know, your aesthetic, I would comment on it a little bit more. I love this. This is great. This is great. I love that we can see who you are, who the team is. I think also the logos of your affiliations, your businesses, like, this is great. It adds some legitimacy, whether or not the logo is for like a, you know, it doesn't have to be Sundance. Like, I love this. It's a little bit about your background. This is the stuff that people usually skim over. Also, like, no one wants to read 100 bios, but because you have these like logos of things that people are a part of, like, it catches your eye. So I think that's actually a great tactic. I think it's okay to use this section of a pitch deck to just like brag about yourself a little bit, because why am I the one to tell the story? You know, part of it is like what you've accomplished, and it doesn't have to be in film, but like if you want to put your, you know, media collective, your laurels from your last film festival, like, I think all these are great. And I think this just like really caught my eye on the page that no one wants to read. So I think that's great. I did read it though, just because. Oh, perfect. I love that you put this in about your actor. I like that it says that she was from Florida for whatever reason. That just tickled me. Like, it adds some, you know, legitimacy, and it makes it personal. Also, I love this photo. Cool. This is great. This is great. I really love the way you talk about how Geraldine, it does speak for itself, and I think it's important that you note that. I also love how you're like bringing us into your next project. Like, that is when I went on like a festival circuit with my first film, I made a huge mistake, because people would be like, what are you working on now? And I'd be like, well, I'm touring with this. Like, that is, you should always have the answer is like, what is my next project? Because people will ask, and they are engaged, and they want to know, they really do. So I think taking that and putting it into your pitch deck, like, this is part of a bigger project, this is my next move, is so smart. So that people understand, they're like, oh, this is me, but this is where I can put my money. Like, are you doing crowdfunding? Do you need a producer? Like, all of these things where they would want to like kind of help you out. Like, this is your ask, or this is your next move. So I love that. I would like to see somewhere in here, or maybe earlier in the pitch packet, just like a director or a producer statement, or an artistic statement, which is kind of, I generally think a pitch packet should have both. But that said, it can be heavy-handed for short, and it is not really necessary for a film that's already been made. But I think either a director's statement about why it's important to you, or how it fits into your career, or an artistic statement that kind of goes over the visual language and how you're incorporating it, would serve you really well somewhere in this packet, maybe before your team bios. That's kind of like a heavy wall of text. So I feel like putting it like kind of earlier on, like, breaks up where the big chunks of text are. Also, this, oh man, I cannot do this for life. I love this page. I never ever thought once in my life to put like the formats that it was available in. Like, this is so important for film festivals. Anyone who wants to screen it is going to ask you how you deliver it. I love this. I also really love that like that you put how many days of shooting that you put in. Like, I think there's just little details in here that really wrap this up, especially because you're trying to pitch at your next project. You're like, we made this in 4 days. Like, that is such a great note for your capacity to work as a team, the team you already built. I think that is just so great. So honestly, I probably had very little to say about this this pitch packet on the whole, even though I just talked for however long. I think it's great. I would add an artistic statement or director statement, and I would rework that log line. And I also would think about including a log line or tagline, actually, for your series, for the whole series. Like, I think you did a great job of describing where it is. A place for all of us that have felt a little bit different, I think is great. But maybe just like one more concise statement about this, or even just breaking this up into 2 separate slides, just so you have, the wall of text is a little bit daunting, and I think all of the things that you're saying in here are really important. So that would be my only other feedback, is just like let the page like breathe a little bit and give people a chance to start again reading on like the next page. But other than that, I think this is amazing. And I want to see this film. Can we watch this film anywhere yet?
So because I started submitting already the film festivals, I don't have the full film online. The trailer's up.
Cool.
So, yeah, on the website that's on the pitch packet right there. And so the trailer's up. I don't know, secretly I can maybe send you a link.
Well, we will put the link to your film's website and social media in the description when we post our final YouTube video, so that everyone can go check it out. And I might use my secret privilege to hit you up to watch this film because I really want to see it. But again, I said this to Jing Jing, please let us know when you premiere, and like wherever we can go see it. I would absolutely love to do that. So that would be our right and privilege to broadcast the heck out of your achievements.
No, I love it. And I'll echo what Jing Jing was saying. I love that you guys are doing this and dedicating the time to it. It's hard to have like someone else's eyeballs on this that like really gives that attention and focus. And so I will make us, I guess separately I'll make another special request. But I was gonna say, like, for me personally, figuring out like I guess like how to do this now with the logistics of my life, I'm like, you guys should do a workshop for people who have kids, how to have like a career in film while having kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a side note. That's a total side note. I think everything that you said here was super accurate, and I think that it feels right, like what you're saying. Yeah, so I really, really appreciate it.
I'm so glad that it was helpful. I love the idea of talking about like family and filmmaking. Honestly, I think that's coming up a lot with the IATSE strike. I'd love to see people pushing for, just for good pay and, family conducive hours. So thank you so much. I am so grateful you were willing to share this.
No problem. Thank you. I might have to bow out, but I will catch the rest of this later. And thank you again and letting me be part of this great community.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too.
Awesome. I am going to flip to a question from our YouTube. In your deck, what are your thoughts on including a top sheet budget also in making a pitch package for a historical biopic? What elements would one use to convey the story and subject matter? Whoo, a loaded question. I'd love to hear it. Okay. So the first question is, what are your thoughts on including a top sheet budget? I think it's okay. But I think it depends where you're submitting it. If you're submitting it directly to investors or somewhere for funding, I think a top sheet budget shows that you've really thought about things. I think it gives them a reasonable expectation about what you're asking them for or what it's going to take. I think when you're submitting to, unless it's a lab or a doc, they usually want the budget separately and not as a part of the pitch deck. So I think Sundance Labs and Film Independent, they also, I think, ask for a top sheet, but it's separate. So yeah, I think it's kind of situation dependent. And then if we are making a historical biopic doc, what elements would one use to convey the story and the subject matter? Oh my goodness. I think that if it's the good thing about historic films about events in history is that we have a lot of classical art that is either from a time period, representative of a time period, or depicting a time period. So it depends how historic we're looking at. But one of my favorite things to see is just like cross-medium representation. So like it's totally fine to put historic paintings in your pitch packet for a narrative historic film, or I mean, well, it wouldn't be documentary historic, sorry, unless you're using archival footage, which you would just get. But I think one opportunity is to grab stills from archival footage. You can get them from the library. Usually there's a slide room where you can pull. New York Public Library has a great archival footage system. Anyone can go in, you can project newspapers, you can pull images, take pictures with your cell phone while it's projected against the wall. It doesn't have to be high budget or really complicated. I think that you can pull, I would say, archival footage, archival photos, and paintings, sculptures, anything that's representative of the time period. If you're doing a biopic and you don't have pictures of the person or any media about the person, I think just using any art that represents your visual tone. And again, I would identify that, right? So like, you know, you're showing a painting, but you're like, this is actually showing like the chiaroscuro is how we want to light this type of scene or whatever. Like you have to point out in the image what everyone is supposed to be paying attention to or what they're looking at. But I think that you can use just almost anything. I hope I answered that question. If I didn't, please follow up and I will be happy to take another pass at it. In the meanwhile, I would love to move over to friend divorce. We have Jennifer and Kat, super duper power duo, who worked on this project together. We have a ton of materials from them, which I am just like super tickled about. Let me find, I actually don't even know where I want to start. Let's start with the, yeah, okay. Okay. So can we see that okay? Yes, thumbs up, okay, okay. So the first thing I want to talk about, and this is also across the board, is the word treatment. A treatment is a very specific thing that I have not seen like one, like I have not one, like I see grants and throw the word treatment around. We want a treatment for this, we want a treatment for that, we want a documentary treatment. And I don't think that a lot of them, a treatment is one thing. A treatment is only one thing, and it's really annoying to write. I've seen, I think Film Independent do it, where they just use the word and then don't kind of follow up with what it is. And this drives me bananas. So a treatment is a third person present tense synopsis of a project. So it is, when you're giving your synopsis on a project, you're giving third person past tense generally. So a treatment is third person present tense. And you only discuss, because you're talking about a film, you only discuss what the audience can see or hear. So you're not discussing emotions, you're not, and it's, so you're like, John gets up from his seat, John, furrows his brow at whatever, right? So, we can tell that John is filled with anger or consternation because his brow is furrowed, but you can't be like, he's filled with consternation. So that is a treatment, and I see that word all over, and people ask for a treatment sometimes, and I don't think they know what they're asking for in grants and residencies, and this is like a trap. So this is something that I have more than one time emailed a grant or residency and said, when you say you want a treatment, are you asking for a written treatment this way, a pitch packet, whatever? Are you just calling it materials treatment? So this is not specific to this project. It is a word that gets bandied about, but it is actually only one thing. So I just wanted to say that, because I do know that grants ask for treatments, and I do think it's worthwhile to reach out to the team and clarify what they're asking for. Because if they want a treatment, often they're just not going to get it, or they're not asking for it and they're going to get it, and they're going to be like, what is this? So I think that that's just something that's really common. So that's just a general note, and obviously a pet peeve of mine. But if you want a great guide on writing a treatment, I think it's UCLA has a great guide on, and I think you can just Google it. It's like a PDF, and it's just like, here are the rules of how to write a treatment. It's awesome. I haven't really seen anyone want a proper treatment, but it is why I always ask. Except for maybe a grad school application. I think that's why UCLA has one. Anyone who goes to UCLA, feel free to fact check me on that. Cool. Okay. I love this project. I think this is such a relatable, charming project. And one of my favorite things is that y'all really took the time to talk about why it was important to you, and make it personal. I think your stories are so great. I have a lot of good things to say, but we'll go through it. So anyway, perfect. Let's get rolling. My first note is about the logline. I'm gonna sound repetitive again, but I feel like the logline reads like a mini synopsis. I think it's good because you have all the information in there. But I think that there's a way to increase the stakes, right? The stakes are actually not that whether or not they're going to file for friend divorce. The stakes are that they're losing a friendship, or that, you know what I mean? The stakes are actually higher than that. And that already happens in the film, right? So you want the stakes of the film to be if they can't figure this out, they will, whatever the stakes are for them. So is it, that they lose their one friend? Is that they lose, whatever, the deepest connection they have in the world? I think that that's just an opportunity to up the stakes, and people really look for that in a logline. I feel because it's your intro to what your story is, you want to make it as dramatic as possible, even if it's not that dramatic in the film. You just want to bring people in. So I think that, but I think you have all the information here. It's just the stakes could use just a little kick in the rear here. I love your character descriptions. This is something, they are so short, so concise, and it's the conflict is clear. Where you say that Rose is highly focused on her career after college, and then in Taylor's you have she, building a life with her partner becomes a priority. The conflict is so clear between these two people, and I think that that's something that everyone could really take a note on. In the whole world, what is awesome about these two characters being paired together is that their personal narratives show conflict with each other. So I think you did a great job there. So you have two synopses in this packet that you sent me. I think there's this one in the front that is broken down into acts. And I think there's one in the back, which I think might be the copy from your pitch packet. I'll get there. I don't know. I have a lot of paper in front of me. But anyway, the only thing that I think is missing in the synopsis, I think it tells the story really well. My question would be, if I was reading this, is like, this is a ton of information, a ton of things that are happening in Act 1 and in Act 2. And Act 3, a lot of time passes, right? So there's like a lot of events, but then you're like years later, which is great. But I think like right in the middle there where you talk about including flashbacks as a way of telling that portion of the story, I would also mention how you're planning to get all of this in your Act 1. Like, is it a montage? Like, do you know what I mean? So I think there's just a lot I would love to see. Yeah, like a year passes, like, are we like, do we cut to just the next year, or do we see action in between it? Like, I can't tell from this if you're going to tell the story all the way through the year, or if you cut to the next year. I feel like it's fair to, you don't want to like step on camera department toes and be like, cut to, fade in. But I think it's fair to be like, we're going to cut to the next year, or a time jump, or a montage, or whatever. I think just kind of explaining how you get there will really help. But other than that, I think this was really thorough, and I like that it's broken down by act. I'm not sure if they asked you to do that, but I always think that is super helpful, because I want to know how people are dividing the story or delegating the time, or whatever. I think this is really effective here. Cover letters. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. It is one of my least favorite things to do for my own projects. I think this is really charming. Honestly, one of my favorite things is you started with your own story, and then you talk about your personal achievements separately and how they weave into your value system as a duo. And then I like that you touch on the script at the end and why it's important. I really love this. I think it's a great cover letter. My only feedback, the only note I really wrote here is I would love to see you use more active language. So like, of course, I'm like, did I circle any examples? I'll never know. Like, we wanted to explore a world in which, like, we explore a world in which, like, you did it. Like, is the script written? Yes. Yeah, it is. Great. I assume so, because this is like so well thought out. Great. So like, you did explore. Your project does explore. Like, I think this is a thing, and I see it a lot, especially with women who are like, I like sort of wanted to do that thing. Like you did it. It is good. Like, and I think just approaching it with active language, with confidence, it is something you have already done. It is something that the story is told. It does make these connections. It does, whatever. So I think that, and at the end where you're like, we've written several drafts, I like that you mentioned that you asked for feedback and you got it. I think that's a great thing to put in a cover letter, as opposed to, I'm an island and I think this is perfect the way it is. Like, I think this shows like growth, introspection. I think this is beautiful. But yeah, I would just like love to see you own that part of it, because you did it and it's great. This is great. My only other note is just this last thing, and this, oops, oh my God, I really thought I'd learn how to scroll before the end of this, but I didn't. The like, why Sundance Lab, or why whatever lab. This is also one of my least favorite things to answer, but it's necessary. So like, take risks and challenges us to hone our craft. Like, all labs are going to help you hone your craft. So one note on like, why Sundance? And I think it's okay to be honest here. Sometimes I'm like, we'll just obviously like name recognition Sundance. Like, I think it's okay to be honest about what it is. But I think that it's just whether you're like, oh, well, this lab would be great because the story takes place in Utah and this lab is in Utah, like whatever it is. Or a thing I like to mention is like the cohort size. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I do a lot better with very intimate feedback because I'm shy. I'm not shy, but you know what I mean. I see that this lab has a cohort of 5 people, and that would really be ideal for me. So there's a lot of things that you can comment on, and I think that just like one more line about why this lab would be awesome. Also, another thing that you can look up, this is my hot tip of the day. You can Google who is reading your applications for grants, and you should. You can Google who's on these boards, what these people like, what they're doing. And you can like creep on their LinkedIn, like you can find I wouldn't like friend them on Instagram, like message them around, not that you would, I'm just saying that. But like you can really do a lot of research about who reads your application and who runs the program and what their values are, right? So if you're like, I noticed that Andrea blah blah has been on the board of this for blank years, and her continuous work uplifting the voices of female filmmakers is incredibly inspiring. So like you can get like almost scary specific with this. And if there's not a thing about the lab other than like, duh, it's a really great lab, I would go with like trying to see who's on the committee and take a look at them. That's also a pretty good way to tell if your content is going to fly in a lab or not. There are some things like stories about trans people and sex workers that I've noticed just like have a hard time getting funded because of the people that are sitting on the board. So sometimes it's just good to see if there's any of these things, it's not how it should be. Your board should be big enough to bounce that around or see the value in everyone's story. It is not always the case. It usually is fine with bigger institutions like Sundance. But it's also good to look up to see like, oh, this film festival or this thing, like my topic is just not gonna fly, like my, whatever story about being a stripper for a summer. So I think knowing your audience will really help you with that if you're struggling to come up with something else to say. I really like this artistic statement. I think you hit everything that is important in here. My notes about this is again, like this, like we think this film is for anyone, like this film is for anyone. Like it is your active language, just taking out the we think and we, whatever. Also the, I would take out I would revamp your first line to just have like a little bit more impact and like a little bit more active language. Even if it's just like hot take, my partner is not my everything, or like, whatever, like something that's just a little bit more punchy because artistic statements can drag. So you want to like, first thing, it's like, what's the point? What's the point of this? What's the message, or what's funny about this film? Like this is, partially a comedy. Like, I think that's great. Like, I think it's okay to be funny. It's okay to be a little flippant. Because the tone does seem like kind of cheeky. Like on your tone video, like I loved that. Like I really thought that you could, I got a lot out of that. So I think that it's okay to carry some of that like cheeky language or flip language into this. But yes. So first statement, this note in the middle where it says, also, I think your note about what it's tonally similar to is spot on. Like I barely saw like Pen 15, but like these 3 together, I could like really envision it in my mind, and like coupled with your pitch packet, I was like, those are awesome. So I don't know how you narrowed those down, but whatever you did it great. The next one that says, this is not just a celebration of two women's friendship, like in a lot of buddy comedies, but it's also more nuanced. This, your parenthetical here, I would just be careful in comparing your film to like other films because, and I'll touch on this later, but a lot of times the people like on the board are like writers of buddy comedies or whatever, like, you know, the people who are reading sometimes are touchy, so like I don't think it's wrong to point out how you're different, but I would be careful based on who might be reading your application that they might like get like offended about that. I think you do a great job of explaining in a million other ways why this is a different sort of film, so that was just like, I would just be like maybe a little cautious about who's reading, if it's like other writers or like whatever. But that's, I think, basically no big deal. Other way. I loved your personal connection. I think this is just beautiful. I think it tracks with the whole concept of the film. It talks about your circumstances in the world. I think it just touches on everything super well. And I think that for applications that don't have this personal connection, I think this is fair game, just as a general note, to put this in an artistic statement. Because I think a personal connection, a personal why is really important. So like this, whoever's given you the space to do this is like, I think this is awesome. The paragraph at the bottom, I think that part of that is maybe more suited towards your artistic statement because it's part of the how and less a part of the why. But, well, I was like, it is the last paragraph. Okay. I also would be careful around some of the language about like casting and how it might change the perspective. Like, I think that it's fair to say what you've done in the past. I think what's really helpful is saying what you've done in the past. In the past, we've hired like mostly women, or like we committed to hiring. I think casting gets dicey, but I think committing to like almost like a quick diversity statement, like how you're committed to hiring. I like to say, this is my secret weapon statement, I like to make values aligned choices with my money around hiring and educating on set. I think, yeah, I think casting gets dicey because then you get into this part where you're like trying to put then you're like it can be it can feel like you're like further pigeonholing someone by like being like, we're trying to cast a person of color or like whatever, like, and I don't think it's necessarily bad. Like I think it's great to keep an open mind about casting. I think just talking about it gets dicey, especially for someone who like, you already have this great foundation of like, this is how you want to hire, like this is what you think is important, like you already have past collaborations with female filmmakers, and like you're two women who are like in charge of this project in the film industry. So I think you already have so much, and I think that highlighting your like past accomplishments and talking about like you know, how you want to hire conscientiously, or you know, make those choices with your funding and with your money, I think is like really beautiful. And again, that is not a hard and fast at all statement. That is just a thought that you can take or leave. This is when I was like, oh, there's another synopsis in here. I actually think this one is stronger. I'm not sure what you were using them for, but I like how the first one was broken up into acts, but I think the language in this one is just a little bit more concise. But that's all I have to say about that. I would like to go through your pitch packet, if that's okay. I'm like so tickled by this project, by the way. Let's see. How are we doing on time? Okay. Okay, that's not the first slide, is it? There we go. Okay. I adore the like screenshots, pictures, visuals that you used in this pitch packet. I think they are so strong. This image for me just evokes like a feeling of like childhood and innocence, like the connection that you make. Like I love that it's blurry, like as if they're just like, you know, they're just moving so fast and having so many feelings, like you can't quite catch it on camera. I love everything about this, and I think all of the images you used in this are incredibly strong. I would say, and you, again, you can take this or leave this because this is a little bit subjective, but I think it's easier. I think IDing the pages in a pitch packet, I know I said this earlier, I think IDing pages in a pitch packet, whether it's the logline or the synopsis, or even just like our central question or whatever, is helpful. And to that measure, I would leave a title page as being a title page. And just say like a narrative feature that, you know, and also I think it's fair to put your goal on the front. If you're like a narrative feature currently in the fundraising process, like you're, you know, whatever, more concise than that. But I think it's fair to put what it is and even your goal up front if you want to. I love this. I think it does need a label. Like maybe it's like our inspiration, our central question, our message, or like whatever, things we asked ourselves before we wrote this script. I think this is great. I think the imagery is beautiful. I think the text is, you know, just gets the point across really well. So I love this slide. I don't even know what I would call it, but I love it. And I think it's unique, to be honest. Oops. I also like this slide. This is like your why. And I think that that's really important. I think, yeah, I think it's important to have your big why in here. And this is really it. Like, this is like, why is it important to you? Why are you the people to tell the story? So like the why is composed of like, why is this important in the world? Why are you the shepherd of this story, the steward of the story? And why now? So I think also too, in your personal statement, artistic statement, one of the things we just read, you're like, we're two women in our 20s or whatever. Like, I think also like part of the why now is like who you are. Like you're at this place right now. And, you know, it loses authenticity if you suddenly are like, oh, what were we doing? Like I'm in my 30s, like I can barely remember the feelings I had in my 20s, to be honest. So I think part of it, like part of the urgency is like, you're just at this place. And I think that that's great. I think that this is, I love that you have this like running time, expected time of completion. I think this information is great. If you don't put what it is on the cover page, I might even bump this up like earlier on just so that people see what it is. And I think that's fair. I think it's also a valid choice to put your logline or a tagline on the cover page and have this be your second slide. I think that's also fine. I think just having the information up front, so someone's not wondering like, what am I looking at for too long. Yes, assume everyone is skimming and assume this is the first thing they're reading about your project, whether or not it's true, I think. I find this picture super charming. This is the synopsis. We already talked about your synopsis. I think 2 pages was a very smart decision here. I also think there's an opportunity here to put, if you wanted to break it up into acts, instead of like separating it and being like act one in your text, just even like a little semi-transparent thing that says like act one behind there. That's kind of going with your like multicolored. You could designate them. You don't have to, but if you did want to, I think there are like subtle ways to stick that in. This is, so you have 2 pages of comps. And I think this is a lot of comps. I think they're like all really tonally accurate and great. Like I feel, I'm like, oh my God, Lane and Rory, like all of these are for like people of a certain age, I feel like really evoke the feeling that you want to get. And so I understand how narrowing it down could feel a little bit scary, because you want someone to like at least pick up on one of them. But I think that there's a way to spread these out. So like, I feel like too many comps feels like you're being like, oh, this movie's been made 32 times, which it hasn't. Like, this is your individual story. I like tone comps. I think that's great. I think the 3 you mentioned, which are the Pen 15 and, you know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think those are great. I think Booksmart is also a really smart one. But I think that there's room for these characters like Rory and Lane, like the still you have on the next page from Shrill, to use them in your in other slides about your visual language or put them in your story, because I think they're recognizable in a way where like I'm never going to pass over a still of Shrill and not feel like a little warmth in my heart for Edie Bryant. It just is. So I think that you have a way to use those in other parts of your packet without maybe you know, without putting them all like on this page, without having 2 pages. I would say a page is fair. I love this also, by the way. I think this is great for a topic that like one of your chief things that you're saying here is that, you know, we don't put a lot of weight on friendship breakups, or we don't think they're as significant as partner breakups or uncouplings or whatever you want to call them. And so I think that putting this just for any of the naysayers, I feel like having this is such a smart move. And I would encourage anyone who has a pitch packet about something that is maybe not widely understood, I think just some access to media about it, or major like players in the industry. If someone's like, I'm reading your thing, but I don't know anything about golf, like whatever, like a small profile of Tiger Woods or whatever. I don't know anything about golf, so I should not have used that as an example, but I did. Let's just move on. So I think that this is really brilliant, honestly. And I was just, I don't know, it's a great idea. This slide, I feel like, is bordering on your like artistic statement, your director statement, producer statement material. And I think that what this is like missing is, I think I really like when there's a picture of the filmmakers or writers along with a little note on your background. So both a bio is appropriate, like a more formal bio, maybe put both of them on the same page so it's like not taking a ton of space. And then another page that's like, here's our artistic statement, our director statement, producer statement, whatever you want to call it, that answers those questions. I think the way you wrote it in your application is really beautiful. You could maybe put a more concise version, but label it as your artistic statement, and touch upon the visual language. Another way also to use those comps is to separate them out and be like, we're using this as visual language. Like Pen 15 specifically, like stills from there, they have a very specific color palette. So like, for example, you could be like, oh, we're using, and like this, your pitch packet has a very specific color palette. Like it's really bright. It kind of reminds me of some of those things from Pen 15 where they have like the caboodle and it's like pink and teal. Like it's got that like kind of bright, like 90s feel to it, which I am like so charmed by. And so I think that that's another way to use those the comps is to be like, we were inspired by the color palette in 1015 and the witty banter of Lane and Rory or whatever. But I think that more than that, one artistic statement or statement from just even maybe a little bit more than this and a little bit less than the written one for the application would be awesome. And yeah, I think your bio should be in there because I think your backgrounds are both really interesting and you tie them in beautifully in your personal statement in the paper application. The only other thing that I have to say is the visually for this, my notes, visually for this whole pitch packet, there were a few slides where like white text on a pink background is kind of dicey for access needs. It's really hard to be picked up by no or low vision people, folks who use screen readers, sometimes it can be a little dicey. And it's like lower contrast. So I would think about just providing a little bit more high contrast text, or even, I can't remember who did it now because I've looked at so many, but you can put like a semi-opaque box over your image so that you can still see the image through, but like maybe it separates the text from the background just a little bit on that in terms of visual accessibility. But that's all I got. I really love this. And I would like to play, before I open up the questions, I would really like to play your tone video because I thought it was great. I don't have any feedback on it, but I think everyone should see it if you're good with that. Because I think it's just a great thing to have for a film that hasn't been shot. So I'm gonna go ahead and share that.
Missed ya. I missed you. I missed you so much. Big one night. Okay, take a while. Awesome publishing program. Maybe we use each other's approach, don't we, Mom? Crutch helped you walk when you had big broken feet. Shared present in pants. Check that. I don't want to. You just need to speak. I was trying to get us back to where we were, but I didn't realize it was so hard for you to be around me. And you say you're trying, but it feels like I'm the only one who's putting in any effort. Maybe who you are now and who I am now just don't fit anymore.
Oh, I loved that. I really did. I think that was just such a great example of cutting together things that already exist in a way where the pacing was just indicative of the movie. Like, I really feel like there was like 1/3 of the like happy-go-lucky friend montage, then it returned to like act 2, and you were like, it was just so great. And I think that I just wanted to share that as an example for anyone who has to make a video out of like relatively nothing, because that's very stressful. So super well done on that. We have some questions in the chat, but I did want to ask you two if you have any questions or if you want to say anything, or do a little dance. I don't know.
Thanks so much for those notes. Super helpful. We really appreciate it. I took like a bunch of notes, but I guess one question that we've kind of been discussing is the title Friend Divorce. And so I guess from like an outside point of view, do you feel like that was kind of like spoiling your sense of the story? Or were you kind of, you were in it and it didn't really matter? It was kind of like, oh, let's see how this unfolds.
I actually really, I think it's, I don't think it ruined anything for me, because if you really think about a film where friends can get legally certified, you're like, that's probably where the conflict is heading. But I also think you can, like, if you really think about it, not that many people do. Like, but if I saw a friend divorce, I'd be like, oh, like, I would like to see that. Like that, I felt like it gives me a sense of that, like, buddy comedy type thing where I'm like, it feels like a Bridesmaids. Like, I think it's concise. I think it's good. I also think you can play off the precursor to the friend divorce and being like, you know, like, can play about like whatever the certification is called in your film, or whatever, like legally friends, certified friends, like any of those, I think would be fine. If you don't want to give it away, or if you feel like it does spoil the ending. But I think it's great. I think yeah, I don't know. I think it was good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just echoing, the way you gave feedback was really nice and very helpful, and I also took a bunch of notes, so really appreciate it.
I'm so glad. Please feel free to follow up with me if anything I said was unclear or whatever. I sometimes can be a rambler. So if I didn't make my point and you notice that, please feel free to follow up and ask me what my point was. Other than that, thank you so much for sharing. I know it takes like kind of a lot of like chutzpah to put your stuff out into the world of the people watching, but it's such a great project. I really feel it in my heart that you know, I know what the heartbreak is, and I know what the joy of friendship is, and I know what having to have a conversation with a romantic partner is, where you're like, it actually, like, my friends have 25 years on you, so you're not guaranteed to be number one overnight. Like, all of those conversations I think are super relevant. And it's like all of a sudden everyone's talking about their boundaries on social media. I love that. TikTok is full of people asserting their boundaries. I think it's timely and engaging. So
Thank you.
Well done. I'm really excited to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I quickly will, I wanted to look at the questions from our YouTube. We have a couple questions about fiscal sponsors and 501c3 nonprofit tax exempt status. Oh my, okay. I'm going to do a limited overview on this. There are a number of programs that have fiscal sponsorship. What I find is that it's important to be careful when someone offers you a fiscal sponsorship, that that your contract is laid out really well. If you want to pursue fiscal sponsorship, I think that's great, but I wouldn't necessarily do it unless you have a grant that is only willing to give you money if you have a fiscal sponsor. And in that case, I wouldn't even ask I wouldn't apply for fiscal sponsorship until you get awarded that grant. Or if you're doing, you know, I don't know, but until you get awarded that grant, like, unless someone specifies, it can be really dicey. The terms, there are a lot of legal terms that go along with it. So I can't speak to all of the nuance involved, or I don't want to in the session, because we'll just go forever. But I do want to mention that that's something where it can be really helpful, but it's really important to take a look at the terms involved, because it is a legal contract and there is money involved and intellectual property rights. Registering your own 501c3 nonprofit tax exempt status, that is so impossible. That's really hard. I'm happy to, if you want to email me, and we can do another class on tax exemptions or incorporating your films, we can talk about that. But that is really difficult. The one thing I will say is it's important to set up an LLC for your production. You should have an LLC for your, or you can be incorporated for your production company, but you should also set up an LLC for each production separately. And we can talk about that at another later date. These are all great topics for things that we can't expand on now, but please email us and follow up, amanda@kitsplit.com, if you'd like to see any of these in another live session where we can do questions. This one, next question. Do you think that one should approach the grant reviewing panelists directly following the response from the funding institution when it says it's unable to provide feedback? That is a hard no. I would say if they say they can't provide feedback, that's something that's a boundary that they've set. And it's important to be mindful of that. I think individually contacting panelists from an institution. So a lot of times institutions will hire outside panelists, consultants, or form a board from outside of their institution, and institutionally what they're looking for and what reviewers are looking for might be different things. It might be the circumstance. They might not have any valuable feedback to give you anyway, but also if they volunteered their time for this organization, it's not helpful for an individual person's time or not respectful of their time, I feel like, to reach out to them individually after the fact. What I do think, but I think this is a great point, what I do think is actually really helpful is to reach out to the organization, the funding institution, before you submit your grant. I believe it is Roy Dean from the Heart Foundation, the woman who runs that grant program right now, has a great article on why you should reach out to grant readers or like people, everyone, funding institutions before you submit a grant. She was like, yes, email us, get to know us, like ask us a question to clarify or tell us a little about yourself. And so I think what is fair is to ask any questions that you have about the format, the content, or if you're nervous about one thing or another, your project, upfront, and they will tell you so that you can submit the right thing. But I think asking them for individualized feedback on the back end, you won't always get a response. But I do think upfront it's fair to ask a lot of questions, and I think that's a really great point and a good practice because you don't always know what they're looking for unless you clarify. This is great. Awesome. I think that kind of sums up our questions from the YouTube. Thank you. You can tell me if I missed anything. Are decks still able to be submitted for feedback? Technically, no, because this was our event. However, I am seriously thinking, and Ken can tell me if he's seriously thinking about running another one of these because it was great. So I would love to actually do this again. And if you have any questions, if there's anything else you'd like to receive feedback on, or something else you'd like us to talk about in a live Q&A, please let us know. My email is amanda@kidsplit.com. You can also email us at contact@kidsplit.com. And let us know what you think or what you're looking for, and we would be happy to take care of it. I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, adios.